Thief Deadly Shadows is the third game in the Thief series and the first game not to be developed by Looking Glass Studios. It was instead developed by Ion Storm, most well known for developing Daikatana and the first two Deus Ex games. Deadly Shadows is a worthy sequel to The Dark Project and The Metal Age, which received what I consider to be unfair criticism from Thief fans, and yet despite this, it is just as good a game as the other two and offers a satisfying conclusion to Garrett's tenure as a master thief. Garrett once again finds himself caught up in events out of his control as an age-old prophecy comes to pass. The cutscenes are again a mix of live action and in-game graphics mixed with hand-drawn, almost cartoonish visuals. The story focuses much more on the Keepers, the organisation that trained Garrett.
I'm not going to sit around doing nothing. That's your job.
The Pagans and Hammerites now taking something of a backseat. They still do feature quite prominently in the story, and eventually you can even do certain tasks to become allied with them, which is kinda cool. Missions are still about stealing as much loot as possible while completing main objectives. Difficulty modes no longer affect the amount of objectives though, more so just the amount of loot needed to finish. The biggest difference in Deadly Shadows is that instead of just going from mission to mission, you're allowed to explore the city in between. The city works as something of a hub between levels where you can visit fences to sell your loot or vendors to buy more gear.
Shopping should never be a rushed experience.
Vendors will also engage in idle chit-chat whilst you shop, and I think it's a neat touch how the female vendors are always hitting on Garrett.
Someone told me your place is over in South Quarter, Garrett. Yeah, that's not too far from here.
The city is broken up into 5 or 6 different areas, each with different vendors and fences, only buying and selling specific types of loot and gear. This can be a little bit annoying when you have to sit through 3 loading screens to get to a certain location. As usual, the City Watch are out to put Garrett behind bars, so sticking to back alleys and staying in the shadows is your best bet. If you do actually get killed in the streets, you end up arrested and taken to Pavelock Prison.
No one makes it out of Pavelock Prison alive.
Most of the gear from the first 2 games returns, though instead of a sword, Garrett now has a dagger, making him even more useless in combat. Rope arrows are gone and replaced with climbing gloves as well. Your 2 most used items are most likely still going to be the blackjack and the water arrow, as they should be.
Hey, the torch went out!
My parents had just bought a new PC when Deadly Shadows was first released, and I can still remember playing it for the first time and being absolutely blown away by the visuals. Even to this day, the way it handles light and shadow is masterful. It was released at a time when dynamic lighting was just becoming a standard thing in game engines, with games like Splinter Cell and Doom 3, and Deadly Shadows more than holds its own in this regard. It runs on a very heavily modified Unreal 2 engine, previously used in Deus Ex Invisible War, and it handles lighting in general a lot better than its predecessors. Watching a character's shadow streak across a darkly lit room as they move past a light source is still a sight to behold. Moonlight seeps through stained glass windows and candles flicker dimly, and it's just gorgeous to look at. Eric Brocious also returns one last time to recreate the haunting, iconic soundscape that the series is known for, and he accomplishes this and more for the most part. All of these audio and visual elements combine in what may be one of the most frightening missions in the game series, the Shalebridge Cradle.
'Twas in my boyhood, in the orphanage known as the Shalebridge Cradle, that I spied her.
Taking place in an abandoned asylum/orphanage, it's the centerpiece for the game's story, and is arguably one of the scariest levels ever made. The introductory cutscene is extremely well written and sets things up perfectly.
'Tis the only place I hath ere spied her for certain, but I dare never return to that place.
I won't say anything to spoil it, but I will say the game is worth playing just for this mission alone. It really does deliver the goods. Turn off the lights, crank up the headphones, and get immersed. There's not really anything objectively wrong with Deadly Shadows, and most of its complaints come from comparisons to its prequels, more than how it performs as a standalone game. It didn't exactly get the best reception from Thief fans when it was released, and I think the main reason for this was that it directly played around with a lot of the core gameplay elements from the first 2 games. A lot of people refer to it as being consoleized, aka dumbed down for the console audience. The main addition in Deadly Shadows is the advent of a third-person view mode, and this really seemed to piss off a lot of people. Now, there's nothing wrong with third-person views in a stealth game, and titles like Splinter Cell and Metal Gear Solid are proof of that. But in a series like Thief, that has always been about bringing stealth into a first-person perspective, to add in the very option of a third-person mode was seen as sacrilege to the hardcore fans. At the risk of coming across like a total idiot, I have to say that I don't mind it. I mean, switching between first and third-person mode is seamless. And there's a lot of times where third-person mode is a real godsend, particularly when you have to see around long corridors or walkways to see if the coast is clear. and it's not like they force you to use it anyway. Another issue with the fans was that the missions are now generally split up over 2 areas instead of one large environment. Now to me this isn't a legitimate complaint at all, because the amount of detail that's been packed into each area completely trumps the fact that you have to wait for a 10-second loading screen in between them. The areas in Thief 1 and 2 may have been massive in size, but they were very limited in terms of what you actually did in them. Long, empty corridors dominated a lot of the level design, making things seem almost labyrinthian. Deadly Shadows doesn't really have this issue, and it's a lot harder to get lost, which I really think is a good thing. I will agree that there are some legitimate complaints, and it's some goddamn bullshit that Garrett can't swim anymore, but most of these critics are really only looking at the negative points without looking at the improvements. I mean, things like being able to attach yourself to a wall in a narrow corridor is an absolute lifesaver at times. But holy hell, stop the presses, they removed fucking rope arrows, what a bunch of bastards. Also, most if not all the crashes or errors caused by modern drivers can be fixed with easily downloadable fan-made patches. Oh well, as the old saying goes, you can't please all of the people all of the time, right?
You must be awfully strong.
My only real main issues with this game is that I find it a little bit too easy. It's quite easy to be stocked up on water arrows, flash bombs and gas arrows even early on in the game. By the time I'm up to the Shellbridge Cradle for instance, I've got enough items to take on an entire zombie apocalypse. Though this might be because I've finished the game so many times and I don't think a first time player would probably have this problem. But it is a far cry from how you'd have to ration your items between missions in Thief 1 and 2. Despite its lukewarm reaction, which as I said seems to have come more from gamers than actual critics, Deadly Shadows is still a fantastic title, and I dare say it's my favourite game in the series. Yeah, I said it. So what? It's definitely worth checking out if you can overlook a few trivial issues here and there. So lastly, looking ahead to the future and the new Thief game due out in 2014. Thief 4, or just Thief as they're calling it, is a reboot being developed by Eidos Montreal, the same guys responsible for Deus Ex Human Revolution. But where Deus Ex Human Revolution at least looked a little bit like it had some semblance of the series, Thief 4 really just looks like a vessel for making more money, and seems to be made by people who have no knowledge or even interest in the series that they're rebooting.
We're going to let you know that, yes, you're about to be detected.
It seems to be more of a game for the newcomers rather than a game for the veteran Thief fans, which is what I think it really should be. I'm not saying they should be bending over backwards for fans of the old games, but to blatantly move away from everything the series is known for is just a flat-out dick move.
And if you focus, keep in mind, it slow down everything. Yeah. So it gives you time to move.
I think my main issue is that they got rid of Stephen Russell to do Garrett's voice. I mean, it does make sense because it's a reboot, but it's still going to be a little bit weird not hearing him.
But think again.
Obviously it's hard to know what the end result is going to be, but going off a lot of the gameplay videos released and taking into account all the press X to take down and 100 XP prompts that keep popping up on the screen, it's safe to say it's going to be a lot different to what most fans are hoping for. But at least after it's released, people might stop heaping shit on Deadly Shadows. Fans can argue for hours over which Thief game is the best, but I think one belief would be unanimous between them, and that's that they're all the type of game you should definitely play at some point in your life. I mean, there is a reason why they're on so many best games of all time lists. If you do plan on playing the new 2014 reboot and haven't checked them out, you really do owe it to yourself as a gamer to do so.
Let go of me!
That's not for you.
Please, sir, I'm hungry.
You have talent. It's no easy thing to see a keeper. Especially one who does not wish to be seen.